As we've discussed today, from healthcare to illegal immigration, as well as the coronavirus and Joe Biden, we're moving into our fifth and sixth questions. They are predetermined. Again, I'm Nick Casciotti. If you haven't seen either of those additional opportunities of discussion today, they'll be linked in the description below. Question number 5 for both of you had the opportunity to review these questions before we started today. So our fifth question is, many state governments have implemented curfews and business closures, referring to those business closures and curfews as lockdowns. And I'm assuming that's to keep people safe. At what point would you consider these lockdowns to have gone too far, Angela?
I would say that any lockdown has already gone too far. Implementing anything that restricts businesses, that closes businesses, prevents people from working, from moving about freely outside of their homes, normal, lawful abiding citizens, any lockdown is just too much. We shouldn't be locking anyone down. We shouldn't be locking businesses up.
The Constitution gives the government power to look after my well-being. It's in there.
Absolutely. And it also is supposed to look after my well-being. So why shouldn't I be allowed to move about freely for my own physical and mental health and my economic health?
But if you
Um,
catch coronavirus and we're at a party together, couldn't you give it to me, then I give it to my grandma and she passes away because of coronavirus?
I believe that as an adult, it's your responsibility to stay home if you're worried about getting sick. And if someone is out actively trying to get other people sick, then that person is in the wrong and is harming someone. And we generally have a way to fight that out in the courts. But it's unprecedented that any government would lock up healthy people during a pandemic. This has never been done before, and it's not going well. And sadly, no one seems to be accounting for deaths of despair, people who are dying from suicide, depression, people who are not going into the doctor because they're afraid of getting coronavirus. One of my friends died of a heart attack because he was too paranoid to go into the ER. Sure, that's one anecdotal story, but there's quite a bit of evidence mounting that there are a lot more stories just like it. And that evidence is being compiled by organizations like the WHO, who I'm usually not a fan of, but I do appreciate that someone is putting in the work to expose how dangerous lockdowns are.
But though you're in Florida, and don't we see cases rising in Florida right now because people aren't locking down? The state is very open. They don't have these massive curfews like California. What about all of their cases and all of their people getting sick?
Well, cases isn't the proper measurement. For one, I mean, case measurements require testing in advance. You have a lot of people that have never been tested who will never be counted as cases. So cases is always the wrong measurement here. Hospitalization rates and deaths are the better measurement. But and I would gladly compare Florida's response to the coronavirus and the actual numbers relative to New York City and New York State and New Jersey and some of these tyrannical blue states that have completely destroyed small businesses, have destroyed livelihoods. The problem is that while there are legal justifications that some of these tyrannical governors in blue states could lean upon, early on, for one, the science increasingly is against lockdowns. Period. We just had a study that even mass mandates aren't an effective way of stopping the coronavirus, with one of the largest studies from Denmark. And more importantly, though, what we've seen is, and luckily we're starting to see state legislators take action on this, it's the abuse of the emergency declaration by a lot of these executives that has become a major issue. And so thank God we're seeing Republican legislators in Michigan stand up and trying to impeach a Governor Whitmer, who is one of the most dangerous threats to her population out there. I'm so glad to be in Florida right now. I don't think there's been a governor in the country that has handled this better. I mean, Kristi Noem is doing a great job up in South Dakota, but the difference is that DeSantis has had to deal with, again, a population here of large elderly population, which creates unique challenges. So what DeSantis has been able to do to stand up, again, thank God I live in Florida, because I don't know if I could last being in a Wisconsin or a New York City or even Ohio, again, showing the differences that lie within the Republican Party as it exists right now.
So what can people do then? I mean, if they agree or disagree, would they be in trouble in California? Angela, what about local law enforcement? Would those people be on the side of the governor? I mean, how is this being handled during these curfews and lockdowns?
Well, I got to tell you, it's kind of a mess. So Gavin Newsom just recently issued another order saying that he was instituting a statewide curfew from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. Thankfully, most of the county sheriffs are saying that they are not going to enforce that order. So that is a shock to me and a really great move in the right direction.
So
One
if a
of
sheriff refuses to enforce the order, what power then does the governor have? Why is he making these political mandates?
Well, the governor can use regulatory agencies to go after businesses or individuals instead. And unfortunately, that is happening. I've been working on a very high profile case in California, doing some pro bono litigation work for a restaurant called Basilico's that has refused to abide by any of the lockdown orders. They've remained open the entire time and they're just doing business as normal. Gavin Newsom sent alcoholic beverage control after them to try to revoke their license and give them a hard time. So
Are their
that's
employees
something.
working or have they been furloughed?
The employees are working. The employees are working. The employees are supportive. They want the restaurant open. It's actually quite an amazing experience to go in and have dinner like a normal human being in California.
We're on our sixth question right now. These were all predetermined. Angela's our libertarian, Tho is our Republican. They had an opportunity to receive these questions beforehand. There's no gimmies, there's no gotchas. It's a great discussion. Number six, if you haven't seen the other questions, they're linked in our description below, and you can subscribe to the channel to go back and view all of those videos as well. Angela, do you think that the freedoms we enjoy in the United States have been overstepped, in which government has set a precedent that may be hard to roll back from in the future?
I believe so, especially in a state like mine in California. I got to tell you, as someone who works in litigation, I see all kinds of crazy laws coming up and I review them as much as possible. It's much easier to get something passed than it is to get it repealed. Getting things turned back is very challenging. So I do worry for restaurants who have had their capacity reduced, their hours reduced, all kinds of additional obnoxious rules that they've got to follow at city, county, and state levels. I don't know if there's an easy path back to what we used to consider normal.
So will we be able to roll this back going forward? Or is Joe Biden going to keep this in our lifetime forever?
Well, historically, we see a ratchet effect, right? It doesn't, when government declares war, it doesn't matter if it's overseas, domestically, whatever, those powers end up becoming normalized and baked into the American legislation. I think one of the exciting things that we're seeing, though, is that the fact that you see so many people resisting these orders, the fact that you see sheriffs recognizing, hey, look, if we don't enforce these insane laws, then they don't really matter. When normal human acts become acts of rebellion, the public becomes used to being rebels. And I think that it really creates an opportunity where the legitimacy of these tyrannical orders are being outed and being questioned by people that perhaps never saw themselves as being particularly radical. So the response that we're seeing, this is why I thought Donald Trump's election this year was so important, right? If you had seen a massive landslide defeat of Donald Trump, then that would have been really disheartening, not because I agree with every single policy that Donald Trump has. There's plenty of things I disagree with. I'm a libertarian Republican sort of guy. But more importantly, it would be that you would have so many voters that were willing to just go along and to go back to the days of the Obama-Biden administration and ask for more lockdowns and more of this policy. The fact that we saw 10 million more people come out here, in spite of, again, a 5-year coordinated campaign by the corporate press, by every single major American institution against this president, we saw 73+ million people come out here and vote against them. Every single one of those votes itself was an act of rebellion. And hopefully that act of rebellion, which was always the real spirit that made America great in the first place, hopefully we'll continue that. Because again, the legislation system, all the things that we have baked into the government, both federal and state and even local levels in many of these cases, that I'm concerned about where those statutes coming from. It's the way the population reacts to them that really has precedence here. And hopefully we'll continue the progress that we're making with having Thanksgiving dinner as some radical act. We need more Americans stepping up.
Should we celebrate Thanksgiving, Angela?
Absolutely. I'm having people over.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate having both of you on today. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, already hit that subscribe button now. That way you can see all of our brand new content as it comes out. Thanks, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.